And then July 2009, you end up as an Aldershot Town player. What did you know about Aldershot before you came, and how did it happen?
Okay, so I'd been released by Shrewsbury. Paul Simpson had offered me a contract way back in the September of the previous year, and I'd tried to negotiate with it. My agent and him didn't see eye to eye, and it became a personal sort of feud, I think. And I latterly noticed that they fell out big time. I mean, big time. And I never played again. I played like 30 games, I think, by the end of November. Never played like 2 or 3 games after that, basically. It's a big fallout. So I was left then. Then we got to the playoff final. Again, I wasn't involved. I was in the stand. And that's just how cruel football is. We lost in the last minute to Gillingham. Simeon Jackson scored a winner. And then I'm getting released the next day. So we're now at the end of May, going into June. And I've been released. Difficult time for any player to get released. I haven't played for the last 6 months as well. So I think my stock was probably quite high the previous season or earlier on in the season, but then it's really low because I haven't played and you're out of, you know what it's like. You're out of sight and out of mind, basically. So I was without a club. I rejected a couple of clubs. I don't know why. I just did. I just didn't feel right. I don't know what I didn't have a club, but Hereford came in for me straight away. I could have still lived at home where I was in Shrewsbury, Bash Church, but chose not to. And had a wonderful life up in Shrewsbury, I've got to say. Really settled. Cried when I left. I loved the place. And then I don't know how it happened really. Moses Ashes Cody, he was a teammate of mine at Shrewsbury, and I used to drive. He sometimes used to take me back down to sort of London area, and then he kind of said about it. I think that they were looking for a right back. They had not had a right back for a couple of years or something like that. So I kind of went down there on trial basically, and thought to myself, well, see how it goes. I'm ready for it, blah, blah, blah. And I've got to say, as soon as I stepped into the place, I loved it. Loved the boys, loved the manager, loved the way we wanted to play. And, I think my first person I spoke to was Nunny, the groundsman, because I was early. Any tip for any trialist, get there early. It just felt like just a real homely sort of warm club, to be honest with you. And it's down south again as well, so I could move back to sort of where my family was from. And it just felt right, to be honest with you. And like I say, I was there for a couple of weeks on trial, played a few games. My first game was against Brentford, who'd actually tried to sign me as well, which was weird. Andy Scott tried to sign me, which was, and then just didn't come back to me on it. So that was quite funny, playing against him in the first game for Aldershot. And then that was it really, mate, to be honest. It was just Gary. I'll be honest, I signed for Gary more than the club at first, I'll be honest, because I really bought into him. I really bought into his sort of mantra of how he wanted to play, which was really important to me. It was like music to my ears, because all everyone's asked me to do before is get the ball out of my feet and smash it into the channel and don't go past that halfway line, basically. And all of a sudden I've got a manager at League 2 level that's saying to me, I'm going to judge you on goals, assists and crosses. And I'm like, wicked. That sounds good to me. You're going to attack the left winger, not defend against him. He's going to defend against you. Switch it around. I want you to be an attacking, overlapping fullback. And I was like, this is my game. This is how I've always wanted to play. And I was excited, and I signed for him. And I signed a 2-year contract. I just got married, and I didn't want the upheaval. Sorry, I was getting married the following summer. I didn't want the upheaval of being out of contract the following summer. So I signed a 2-year contract. And I'll be honest, had I not signed a 2-year contract, Graham, I probably would have gone. If I signed a 1-year contract, I probably would have gone with Gary to Wickham, I imagine, at the end of that season, like everyone else practically did. But it was it was brilliant, mate. I really, was over the moons really to go and just excited to play football, mate. Really, and it was just a nice atmosphere.
So for himself, I mean, Aldershot had got promotion into the Football League, and it was like that season was a special one for the club. So it got back into the Aldershot had got into the Football League, where of course the previous football club had folded 16 years before. So the first year it stabilised itself in the Football League, and then you've come along, but it looked like it was set up to push on. And in those first couple of months, while Gary was the manager there, it got himself into a good position, of which you played a big part to get it stabilised. I seem to remember we had a couple of home games where we scored 4 on the trot, and then all of a sudden, the next day, Gary's gone to Wickham Wanderers. So yourself, as a player who bought into Gary's philosophy and style and everything, he must have been bitterly disappointed that he's gone.
Just when something's too good to be true, it often is, isn't it? And that's kind of how it felt, really. It was really bizarre though the way it sort of happened, because I can't remember. I think, correct me if I'm wrong. We played Morecambe or we played Cheltenham on the Saturday.
Yeah.
And then there was a little bit of a rumour. I think it was at 27-1 to get the Wickham job. Peter Taylor had just been sacked, and then all of a sudden, come in Monday morning, and I think he's like massively odds on to get the job, sort of thing. But he doesn't say anything, and he's there. So you're thinking to yourself like, well, it can't be true. He's here. And we go out and train. And straight away you think, well, if he's going to take the job, we're not going to go and train, are we? We're going to have a chat first. And he doesn't. We train. And then he tells us at the end he's going. Really, really odd. And then it was like, look, I'm off, lads. I'm going to Wickham. And he's going, like, go and put a bet on if he can. He didn't really say that. I'm joking. You might have heard it, but he didn't. But he, no, it was devastating. I was got to say, I mean, there was one or two there that were over the moon. He was going because they weren't playing, sort of things. As often is going to be with managers that don't pick you. But everyone else was gutted. I got to say, it was on the floor. And for me personally, I was just thinking, please take me with you, because I love you and I want to play like this way. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to Aldershot at all, but I'd only just arrived there. I'd signed for him, if you like, and then all of a sudden he's leaving. I feel like, what's going on here? And someone just literally took the rug from underneath me. But c'est la vie, basically. That was that, and he was gone. And he did try and sign me a couple of times, but just circumstances just never prevailed for me to do it, basically.
So from there, you got Jason Dodd comes in with Paul Williams on a caretaker basis for a month or so, and then Kevin Dillon comes in and is the manager. And it was a bizarre season, really, because it was you got to the playoffs. You had the game against Rotherham, which no doubt we'll talk about. And in the build-up there were some fantastic games, weren't there? I can remember the Cheltenham win late on when Dean Morgan scored a great goal, and there were some other games in between which were some fascinating times. So it was a bumpy old season. It got to the playoffs, and it could have been so different.
I maintain if Gary had stayed on as manager, we would have got promoted automatically. I've felt like there's no doubt in my mind about that at all. It is. Sorry, I just had to do it. No doubt in my mind. There's a really good combination. Cooley as well. Martin Cooley can't underestimate. I think his impact as well, because it was literally the good cop, bad cop. For me, they were more than fair with me, and I think they were with everyone. For me, it was if you worked hard, you listened to what they wanted you to do, you respected the team, if you like, they'd be fine with you. Both of them would be really good with you. If you didn't, then Gary would let you know a little bit, but Cooley would definitely let you know. But I never got that side of Cooley, to be honest with you, because I just worked hard, and I think he kind of respected me, and that was that, really. But we had, like I say, is a real turmoil sort of time. Jason Dodd came in. I think he thought he was getting a job because someone was coming in to buy the club or whatever it was at the time, and and then we had that instability, really. It's just, to be honest with you, mate, it was just a bit of a joke, really, because we didn't know what was going on. It was just like, oh, he's coming in 1 minute, then someone else is coming in another minute. We were like, what's going on here? And then Kevin came in, Dill came in, and let's be honest, he's not stupid, Kevin. I got on all right with him, to be fair. He was really good to me. And I've got to say, like, he didn't need to do much. I mean, we were our own rabble. Do you know what I mean? We knew how we wanted to play. We had an identity amongst us of how we wanted to play. So for me, it was easy for him to sort of manage us. I think he only brought in one or two players. He didn't make wholesale changes, really. And then obviously we got to the playoff semi-final, really, which we should have done better with, I've got to say. But ultimately, the club lacked a bit of discipline after that, though, I've got to say. I think players they needed a Cooley there, a firm hand around the place as well. And I'm not saying Dill didn't have that, but it's just they weren't his players as well, if that makes sense as well. It's a difficult dynamic sometimes when you come in midway through a season and trying to ascertain your sort of authority, your style of play, your standards, everything about you. It's really difficult. So I felt a little bit not sorry for him, but I just felt that was a difficult task for him, because we had some big characters in that dressing room as well, and that was difficult to control at times as well. So Yeah, all in all, it was that season was a bumpy ride, but one that I think I probably played my best football, I've got to say, of my career during that season. And I think this is where fans need to understand and realise that actually the manager's instruction has the biggest influence on you as a player, because in training, they don't see in training. So if you're doing something in training and you pass the ball into midfield, for example, they will turn around to you and go, "Oh, I don't want you to do that. Don't never do that." So when you're watching a game on a Saturday and you might think, just pass it into midfield, just pass it into midfield. No, I'm not going to, because I know that he's going to go mental at me if I do pass it into midfield. So what you might see as a fan is quite obvious, and you think, why are you not doing that? You're rubbish. You're this, that, and the other. Sometimes it's not that. Sometimes they are. Sometimes they are rubbish. But sometimes it is actually they're just obeying the manager's instruction that he doesn't want him to do that. And if he does do that, there's a good chance he won't play again, or he'll be subbed off, or he's going to get a hell of a bollocks, basically. So it's it's sometimes not quite so obvious. But the instruction from Gary, and it carried on with Dill to a certain extent, not quite to the same extreme, was we were going to play football and we had a real identity about ourselves. And that's when you have any successful team. Shrewsbury, we were successful. We were long ball. We were very long ball, very direct, but we all knew what we were doing. At Aldershot, we were successful, but we were total football. We took loads of risk, but we all knew what we were doing, and we all knew our roles within that team. I suppose that's like any industry, any job, really. There's a structure, and if you know your role within that structure, and everyone knows their role within that structure, you're going to get more productivity, and that's exactly what we did. I've been in lots of teams where not quite sure how we're playing. It's a bit of a grey area. We're going long, we're going short. I don't know really much. Where do you go when I get the ball? And then that's where it all falls down, and that's where you might win some games, you might lose some others, but ultimately you're going to lose more than you win playing like that. And that's been the case quite often, sort of thing. So having a real identity was key, and we had a really good one.
And then the following season was when halfway through, Kevin went just after Christmas. I think we lost at home to Oxford, if I remember rightly. And something wasn't right. You could tell in the build that there were things, there was a struggle. We weren't getting the results. The performances weren't great. But did he get a chance? Did he get a fair chance to turn that around, considering what happened the year before, or do you think, thinking back, that it was probably the right thing to happen?
I think it's unfair. I don't think anything's often fair in football, is it? To be honest with you, I mean, it's very knee jerk, and it's most things are dictated by finance and crowd attendances and things like that sort of thing. I think Dill was always up against it, having a Reading connection, in terms of like that was always a default sort of like scapegoatism, if you like. I was Reading anyway, sort of thing. So I don't know. It is what it is, I suppose. He wanted to change the club for the better. His intentions were really good, I thought, in terms of professionalising it off the pitch as well, and growing it. Just some of the hotels, for example, we stayed in, they weren't good enough, and he'd let people know about that. He wasn't scared in voicing his opinion, which I quite respected. And ultimately, he wanted to do it for the good of the football club, like training ground and things like that, and do it properly. Was the club ready to go with him on it and spend and implement the sort of structures that he wanted? Probably not. So then you basically had two people or two things pulling in separate directions, probably, and that created animosity and tension, I'd say, which probably manifested itself onto the players as well in the dressing room. I'd say that we could sense that he wants this, the club are doing this, and they're not getting on, basically. They're not going in the same. There's not a united front here, not like there was with Gary. So that kind of, and then coupled with the fact that you had, I say, big characters that needed managing. And when you've got all that going on in the background and the tension, everything like that, it can manifest itself into flashpoints. And there were one or two flashpoints, definitely, during training sessions and things, that sort of thing. But for me, look, I've got to say that Kevin was brilliant for me, because he really liked me. He used to talk to me an awful lot. I think it helped that Nigel Gibbs, who I mentioned earlier, had obviously been his colleague at Reading for a few years and spoke quite highly of me, I think, to him. So he knew what kind of person I was, and as a player, he was really good to me as well. And also, I've got to say that it never happens, and I think it should happen more, but he gave me a new contract when I still had a year left as well. So I think he knew that probably Gary wanted to take me as well. And but he made me an offer, to be honest with you, that he didn't have to do, to be honest with you. I had a year left, and I think he pretty much doubled my wages, basically. And another 2 years. So I was in a position there, and what do? You know, I'm looking a gift horse in the mouth. How can I say no? And I enjoyed my time there. So from my point of view, he was really good to me. He was really good.
And I have to say, I got really well with Kevin. I liked him. We had a good relationship. And I think the trouble was, and I look back at maybe you think about things and how maybe you could do things different, and I could have done things different with him on the media side, because the perception of him in the public domain wasn't great. He came across as a bit of a dour guy, and you know, he wasn't comfortable in front of the media. I think it was quite obvious in that. But I found his sense of humour behind the scenes really good, and I really enjoyed his company. And I don't think people saw the Kevin Dillon that I saw on the inside, on the outside, and that probably didn't help.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I think that actually now, when we're fast forwarding 10 years, it's probably the other way around now, isn't it? People court the media more now, and actually don't have as much substance as probably he did. Mm-hmm. So there's actually quite a lot of substance behind him, and he didn't suffer fools gladly. And I think he kind of looked at media and self-praise. He's an old school kind of person in terms of his outlook. So, self-promotion, self-praise, it's very prevalent in today's society, certainly in football. I can name a few quite close to home as well. But he... Well,
we'll come on to it later on.
Yeah, okay, cool. But he wasn't like that. He wasn't like that at all. He's old school. And he's, listen, where he's from the north. And he was a tough sort of... is he a Geordie or is he a Mackem? No, he's a Geordie. He's a Geordie and ours is a Mackem. And, he comes from that working class roots, doesn't he, sort of thing, where everything's sort of tough and you can't show emotion and things like that sort of thing. That's how I kind of found him, just a straight guy. But you're right, he did have a dry sense of humour, and he didn't mind saying it how it was, basically, certainly in private. I remember some of the waitresses at hotels. Some of the things he said to them in terms of this, if the soup was cold, it was just, oh my god, they got it both barrels, which is quite funny coming from the north, because you'd think they'd appreciate any bit of food, but it was it was quite funny. He was quite funny, good sense of humour.
So Kevin goes, and almost immediately Dean Holdsworth in the main seat.
They weren't any mugs, do you know what I mean? They were decent, and I don't know how many there, 20,000 or whatever it was, Upton Park, but we were fully deserving of the win as well.
How does a squad with that quality get relegated from the Football League?
Oh, Graham. It was just a weird time, mate. Just so much. Football, you need stability. Footballers need stability. They need structure. You don't give footballers structure and stability, you're flipping it, you're on amok,